In five. Okay. Hey, Bernadette. Hey, RJW, Snowman. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. As of this taping of this broadcast, people are casting their votes in Minneapolis, in New York, in Virginia, in New Jersey, actually all over the country. There are thousands of races, thousands of races. Casting your ballot is so important. This is the time when all things are equal, ostensibly. I love the fact that in Virginia, they still use paper ballots. Yeah, I'm a fan of the paper ballot. I don't trust the machines. I never have. I don't like it. Haven't you noticed that when they started, we used to have what they would, I forget what they're called. You'd come out of the Bryce screen, you'd come out of the polls, and they would ask you how you voted, and it was extremely accurate.
Yeah, the exit polling. Yeah.
The exit polling. But as soon as at the advent of the machines, there was a discrepancy between the exit polling and what the machines came up with. So now we don't do exit polling anymore. Haven't you noticed that? Yeah. So I don't trust that. I trust exit polls because they were uncannily accurate. Once people have cast their votes, they feel they have nothing else to lose. And they want to let you know how they voted and why they voted. And so in Virginia, they still do it the old fashioned way. I like that. I hope that we will get back to that. I don't mind taking time to get my vote. I do mind not feeling very secure in my vote. But I tell you what, in early voting in New York City, more than 750,000 people had already voted. Wow. What about Omar Fateh in Minneapolis? What about him? He is launching a serious challenge to the mayor. Now, mind you, he won the Democratic caucus, but the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, and they caucus, that is how they come up with the mayoral candidate, the nominee for the Democratic Party in Minneapolis. Well, he won the caucus and they withdrew their support from him. But we do have a Mamdani of the Midwest, as we say. But no one has talked about State Senator Fateh. No one's talked about him. And he's just as progressive. And in fact, he's done so much work at the state level that Minnesota is going against the current trends in America. Bryce, now more people are attending college in that state. They're trending upwards because he has made monies, he's worked to make monies more available to college students. So think about that. So pay attention to that race. Pay attention to Mamdani in New York. Pay attention to the Virginia race. Virginia and New Jersey could end up with women who are governors of those states. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. In Virginia, you have a Black candidate who's a Republican, who is not a right winger. She is just socially conservative the way so many Black people are. And you have got a veteran who was initially supported by the NAACP, but then many Black people said, wait a minute, how are you going to support the white candidate because she is a Democrat over the Black candidate? So NAACP withdrew their support. Oh boy, politics is just getting so interesting. In the meantime, we still have these international conflicts. We've got a lot to talk about today, Bryce Green. We're looking at Russia, we're looking at China, we're looking at Argentina. We're trying to bail them out after Argentina they're trying to do to Venezuela what they did to Argentina. That is make it the playground of the West, and it did not work. Just didn't work. So we got a lot to talk about, but let's start with these elections. But before we even start with these elections, Vice President Dick Cheney made his transition, 84 years of age. He was surrounded by his two daughters and his wife of 61 years. May he rest in peace. Yes, I didn't agree with his politics, but he's a human being. And I know that his family and the people who love him are bereft today. And certainly my prayers go with them. That having been said, as he is being eulogized today, I think we need to look at who he was in real life, Bryce Green. I think we should not be unmindful of that. Welcome back to the show, Bryce Green. Dick Cheney first up before we get to these elections with these Democratic Socialists who are threatening to make life affordable for Americans. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, let's start with Dick Cheney. Your thoughts about him, the project New
Yeah,
American Century, right?
got a lot of thoughts about Dick Cheney. I mean, I think you might be stretching the truth by calling him a human being, but that's neither here nor there. Uh, One of the things that he should be known for is, of course, the Bush presidency, which he helped steal first of all, and then he helped steer onto a course of one of the major military engagements of the American height of empire. The Afghanistan and the Iraq War and the global war on terror more generally was something that, according to the Cost of War project done by Boston University, has cost over 4.5 million lives, and that's a conservative estimate.
But wait a minute, could we go back to the theft of the Bush of the Gore presidency for Bush, right?
Right.
I mean, because that went to the Supreme Court. I don't think we should ever forget that, because that put us on the dangerous course on which we find ourselves now. And it's so ironic that, he and his daughter were standing up against Donald Trump for democracy, and he smashed it in the first place, right?
Right. The Bush presidency of course, came into be in a highly contentious process. It ended in a recount in Florida where there was disputes over which ballots were considered legitimate. But the way in which the Bush administration stole this presidency has really been under discuss and kind of shifted to the wayside. And I say stole because there were many felonies and illegal acts that were committed by the Bush campaign to ensure that the recount stopped, to ensure that lawyers in the state of Florida wouldn't be helping the Gore campaign. Jeb Bush, for example, was the governor of Florida, the brother of George Bush, and he said publicly that any law firm that assisted the Gore campaign with helping this recount effort would not get contracts from the state government. Well, this is using the office of the state to affect an election. Totally illegal. And of course, then you have the Dade County riots, in which they effectively rioted to stop the count. I mean, it was like a smaller version of January 6th.
It was. It was these young white Republican kids who, with their polo shirts and loafers and khakis, they really did lead a riot. While these people were trying to literally count the votes, they were trying to break down the doors.
Right. And their efforts were successful. They prevented the recount from continuing, pushing everything to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, of course, notoriously, not a pro-democracy institution in most regards. Well, they just handed it to Bush, saying that, well, we need a president. Let's just give it to Bush. And of course, this led to the Bush presidency. One thing about Dick Cheney is that he was part of an organization called the Project for a New American Century, which was a think tank that consisted of neoconservatives and ultra-Zionists aimed at promoting an aggressive U.S. foreign policy. Now, after Cheney and Bush stole the election, they proceeded to staff the Bush administration with these Project for a New American Century alumni, almost 25 of them. Throughout the Bush administration in various departments. And this laid the groundwork for the global war on terror. And we can talk about the Dick Cheney's role on 9/11. We can talk about Dick Cheney's role in fabricating the evidence that led to the invasion of Iraq. We could talk about all of that. But what's really disgusting is the whitewashing of all of this, which I think is the more relevant story today. I was reading the New York Times obituary of Dick Cheney, and it was fairly ridiculous. I mean, they talk about how he was on a mission to promote democracy around the world. That's how they described this global war on terror. That's how they described this policy of imperial expansion. And this was nakedly described as such by people within the administration as empire. Karl Rove said, "We're the empire," but the New York Times is downplaying it. They said that he was a defender of democracy. They also talk about the ways that how he endorsed Kamala Harris and how he was, pro Biden and pro Democrat in the most recent election. And they used this to show up his pro democracy bona fides. However, being against Trump doesn't make you pro democracy just because you say that you like Kamala Harris and you want to defend the Constitution. And they describe him as they describe his support for Kamala in terms of his desire to defend the Constitution, when this is the guy who helped authorize the torture program, who helped authorize the massive warrantless surveillance that was never dismantled and has only expanded to this day. So the New York Times hagiography of Dick Cheney is really something to behold. And it should serve as a warning to anyone trying to talk about these issues that if you're going to, whitewash the history of one of the most violent and horrific war criminals of this century, of this era, well, then you really have no business in talking about any serious issue, and people should question your ability to do so.
Well, Dr. King and Martin and Malcolm X and people of that ilk, they are controversial today. And the people who have launched these wars, they are lifted up. But see, they're lifted up by the corporate media. I think that is why you really, really, really need to support independent media. I hope that you will follow Bryce Green on Substack. I hope you'll follow him on all social media platforms. And thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up for this show. Like and share, like and share. Everybody, please like and share this show on your platform. Hey, Sharon, I've known Sharon all my life. She was in the Push Choir when I was a little girl. Love you, Sharon. And Andre and John and Daryl and every Snowman and Bernadette, and RJW, everybody. Please like and share the show. That will help us a lot with the algorithm, because we are also pushing against being pushed back. Because when you do progressive politics and when you tell the truth, the unvarnished truth about what's happening in this world and what has happened, the powers that be really do try to bury you, and they do control this space. But I think it's important. We need to be mindful of all that happened. And that was just a small piece of the legacy of Vice President Dick Cheney. They call him the most consequential vice president in history, because many people, we've not felt that he was the president ultimately, that he was that guy. And so his philosophy shapes that presidency, because George W. Bush was quite a departure from his father, George H.W. Bush, in terms of, they really had moved full tilt into this project for the new American century, the neocons. And boy, oh boy, this has been a whole lot. So, we will see how this continues to roll out. But he did make his transition, and everyone, I'm glad that Bryce Green was able to give us a bit of a reminder about his history and about what his true legacy is. If you had to sum it up before we pivot to these elections today, how would you sum up his legacy? What would you say if you could be talking to another audience today? What would you do? Hey, Linda Lou, how you doing?
Well, to put it simply, I mean, I would say that he is closer to the Hitler of our time than most other people. His legacy is that of mass death, that of increased surveillance, reduced rights and protections at home, and complete lack of remorse for any of it. And this was all done in the name of advancing the corporate and neoconservative and Zionist agenda. It was all done in the name of oil companies and Israel and the financial sector. I mean, it doesn't get any more clear than that. The fact that he died, alone surrounded by family at an old age, is really an indictment of the world, because this is a man who should have been, hung at Nuremberg if there was any justice in the world. But he was able to live out his life quietly and surrounded by family. That's the real tragedy here, that there's no accountability for the sort of crimes that someone like Dick Cheney committed.
Unless we tell the story. How about that?
I mean, even if we tell the story, he got away with it. He got away with it. The same can be said of Henry Kissinger, who died, I think, a year or two ago. He died old,
At
over
100.
100 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no accountability for him. And the same will likely be said of much of the Bush administration, which I still think is one of the most consequential administrations in American history. People like Colin Powell died a few years ago. He helped lie us into a war that killed millions of people. You have people like Donald Rumsfeld, who was Secretary of Defense of that administration, also a key figure in not only the global war on terror, but also much of the chicanery that littered the 1980s and 90s, and a whole bunch of other things. You have people like Condi Rice and David Addington and all those guys. They're not going to see any consequences for their actions. They probably have cushy jobs. John Yoo, the lawyer who issued the torture memo, I'm pretty sure he has a very comfortable job at Yale University. These people are, really the worst of the worst, and they're being rewarded, and they're never held accountable. And this is why someone like Trump is able to, do what he does. The Bush administration, and well, really every administration before, but especially the Bush administration, showed that you can do any crime you want, and if no one's going to hold you accountable, well, then it's not a crime, and you can continue to do it.
Well,
And
if you are working for the oligarchs, and
right,
if you're working for the establishment, you can do that. If you're working for the people, you get savaged. You're controversial, and everyone be mindful of that. There is no perfect person in the world. That having been said, we tear apart the people who fight for us, and we allow the people who have fought against us to be built up. It's something we need to think about, really. We really, really, really need to think about that, because that does not help us at all. We've got these elections. We've got Minneapolis. We've got New York. We've got the Mamdani of the Midwest. And we've got the Fatah of New York. How about that? I'm going to have to flip that, because it's really been dismaying to me not to hear more about State Senator Omar Fateh in Minneapolis, who mirrors Zoran Mamdani in so many ways. They're both state legislators, and State Senator Fateh has done so much great work, and the Democrats pushed back against them both. But they went further with Omar Fateh. They withdrew their support after he won the nomination. And the donors who forced the Democratic Farmer Labor Party to withdraw their support were not even from Minneapolis. Unbelievable. So, but they both proudly carry they're in the Democratic Socialist tradition, which is Bernie Sanders, quite frankly. And you tell me, what is our takeaway today? Because you still have President Obama did not endorse Mamdani, and boy, oh boy, these Democratic. The Democratic establishment really bent themselves into pretzels trying to figure out how not to endorse him. They just withdrew the nomination from Senator Fateh. They just took it back from him. But he's still moving up in the polls, so we'll see how this goes. So you can take them together, or you can take them separately. What do you make of this? These Democratic Socialists, these are two top 20 American cities, right? What does it say to you about these? And they're young people, both under 40.
right. Well, I think the first thing that this shows is that there's a hunger for a new politics in this country, largely driven by young people, by marginalized communities who have been either dismissed completely or taken for granted by the existing Democratic Party. And I think, as we've seen with the Kamala campaign and and the Biden presidency and campaign before him, all the way back to Obama, that the Democratic Party believes that it can do whatever it wants, regardless of the gains that are achieved for these marginalized groups, uh, because the groups have nowhere else to go. That if they want any sort of crumbs from this table, they're going to have to vote for Democrats, uh, and there's nothing that they can do about it. But some people have been pushing back against that. Some people have been demanding more, and the rejection of establishment candidates in these two races shows that those people have yet to be fully mobilized, have yet to be fully activated to their true political extent. In the case of Mamdani, this was a historic effort of grassroots campaigning, of going to people, talking to people, mobilizing people to knock doors and hit the city blocks and just talk to people about the issues that they care about and motivate them. When was the last time there was a candidate in this country where a high profile candidate where you said this person genuinely believes in something, and this person genuinely has a shot, and this person has a movement behind them? That's very rare. Every so often there'll be a celebrity candidate or whoever.
We had that with Jesse Jackson. I mean, I'm not saying that
Right.
my dad, but Abby Phillip's book really does begin to capture that, and you had that with Bernie Sanders.
Right.
But and it's interesting that these people catch fire as populists. Even Trump caught fire as a populist.
Right. Exactly. It's because people understand that there's something fundamentally wrong with the system, that they've all been taught to respect and to adhere to, and that if you just do your part and vote and work hard, then the world will just get better. That people are starting to realize that that's a bunch of nonsense. And when the establishment freaks out about someone like Mamdani or Fatah, then that motivates a lot of people to support the candidate even more, because the right people are freaking out. The people who ruined your lives are freaking out. This is why Trump won, right? It's because people like Hillary Clinton was losing her mind. People like the intelligence community were losing their minds. And uh, these are the same people who had destroyed their lives. These are the same people who had looted them in the 2008 crisis, the same people who had made sure that in the wake of the crisis, the bankers got away with it. I mean, Trump was able to, ignite a fire in those people, uh, and therefore ignite a fire in his own base. Mamdani does this the other way, right? Instead of leaning into right wing authoritarianism and you know we need a strong fist to get everything back together, he's appealing to just common sense needs
Mhm.
of everyday people, saying, well, Eric Adams and Governor Cuomo and people before it, they made this city unaffordable, and so I want to make it more affordable. I'm not owned by the real estate developers. I'm not owned by the landlords. I'm not owned by Wall Street. I am owned by you, the people. So that's why I'm coming down and talking to you. That's why I'm sitting on the subway or talking to taxi drivers or talking to airport workers or what have you. That kind of politics is far more appealing to the general public in America, because despite what they say, things are getting dramatically worse here. I mean, you have the government right now just cruelly cutting SNAP benefits. That's the food stamps. You have all these foreign wars that we're looking at, which are costing us money, and the Trump administration is planning on exacerbating them. Previously, in the Biden administration, childhood poverty increased by a factor of 3. I don't think people realize this. Childhood poverty increased threefold from 2021 to 2024. Poverty in general increased by 67%. This is according to the government's own data, and it doesn't even come close to capturing the true cost of what that means. So things are getting dire here, and the Democratic establishment is doubling down on more of the same. But people like Mandani and Fatah are pushing back against that and showing that if you put elbow grease in, if you get human beings to go and knock on the doors, if you get an organization of real activists, serious activists behind you, well, then you can make a lot of change, even in a city as entrenched and corrupt as New York.
And so did India Walton in Buffalo. And yet all
Right.
three of them,
A
India
cautionary
Walton,
tale there.
yeah, absolutely. But all three of them who came, they didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of the ground. And then the Democratic Party, and I think it's important for us to point this out, stamped all over them just to try and take them out. At least the Republicans, they said, well, I don't like Trump, but I'll work with him. Now I'll surround him with all the people I want so we can achieve our objectives. But they were smart enough not to alienate the people that they needed, right? But then, in Virginia, we've got a black woman who's the Republican nominee, Winsome Earl Sears, and you've got Abigail Spanberger, a veteran, and President Trump will not endorse Winsome Earl Sears, and I think that his endorsement could make a difference in the race for her. Do you think race might be a factor?
Well, it always is, right? I mean, one of the big Cuomo super PACs just recently released an ad, putting Mamdani's face on, like in front of 9/11, like the towers exploding on 9/11. Saying like, oh, this guy, he is friends with Hassan Piker, who said that America deserved 9/11, and therefore, I mean, they know what they're doing. They're putting a Muslim man, which for many Americans is still the scariest thing in the world, in front of a really traumatic event that was blamed exclusively on Muslims, not just the Al Qaeda hijackers, but also all Muslims. Your friend down the street, your friend in the mosque, your friend who you meet at work. This sort of fear is integral to American politics and integral into securing the power structures that govern America. You could argue that the American electoral system is a genuine reflection of the American people. I know that can be challenged in many ways, but the racism that many Americans still hold in their hearts is still a very potent force that governs and dictates people's actions and people's gut feelings towards these sorts of things. And so I think race is a major factor. One of the reasons that I think Mamdani might be more palatable for mainstream audiences more than Omar Fatah is because he looks a lot less other than Omar does. Omar is darker skinned, has a thick curly hair, and
he identifies as a black man.
And he identifies as a black man.
Yeah.
And you might be able to have a serious contest between which figure in American psyche is scarier, the Muslim man or the black man. Depending on which white person you ask, it might change based on the day or based on what they see on the news. But Mamdani, he definitely has the appearance that could put him closer to the the platonic white ideal, and that's of course nothing wrong with Mamdani and nothing just no fault of his own, but something like that is one of the reasons that CNN or whatever will have him more front and center. The other reason, of course, that can't be ignored is that New York City is just a major city and a bigger city than Minneapolis by far, even if Minneapolis is one of the major American cities, and that the heart of American culture and media and finance and industry usually lies in New York City. And so whoever is controlling that city is obviously going to get a lot more attention. But the race aspect shouldn't be ignored. I mean, that's just being media literate.
Well, at least many people are saying that these elections today, because of course we've got the proposition in California that will determine whether they're going to, redistrict and favor Democrats. Um, what might this say about the Trump presidency? Because according to the latest polls, he is historically unpopular, and yet he's still. I don't know. I'm like, who are you talking to? Because I'm wondering if that is so, even with the pain that people are in. But I don't know. What do you think? What do you think might happen today? I saw a lot of man on the street interviews in New York, where they just catch people coming out of the polls, and you had a lot of people who said, "Well, we need someone with experience, so I want Cuomo." Um, some blacks in New York said, I need you to talk more about these race-specific issues, our dealings with the police and the justice system. For black people, we've never had the space just to talk about class. I mean, racism is a form of classism, to be sure, but when you're the readily identifiable other, there's some space that we don't have. What do you think is what does this election say to you right now?
It reiterates that we're in such a monumental time, right? I know, cliche, right? You never heard that this is the most important election of our life before, but it's true. Trump administration is flailing. Of course, they don't have any plans to make life better for Americans. What they do have is the Trump brand, and that Trump brand is only so potent, and it can only take you so far. But once material gains start not to manifest, then there really is nothing left, and people and Americans in general start seeking an alternative. And for so long, the Democratic Party has not been a viable alternative. They've offered, slogans. They've, thrown Beyonce in your face, and had a well-speaking Obama to hype people up, but nothing in terms of an actual plan for bettering people's lives. The Biden administration tried to campaign on that a little bit, but they were only able to deliver a very small portion of the things they promised, and they went back on a lot of their other promises, including the minimum wage, COVID relief, just to name a few. And the Kamala campaign didn't even try to promise anything big. They didn't even try. They didn't say that there's going to be major change. They didn't say that there's going to be some sort of upset in the political system. She promised more of the same. American voters saw that, didn't go for it. What this election is showing us is that the American voters are looking for something else, and that if that thing is offered, then the voters will come. And that thing I'm talking about is serious policies that address the needs of the community, and a serious grassroots effort that is aimed at invigorating the community and mobilizing them to go and vote and talking to them and hearing their concerns. These two things go hand in hand, right? If you don't have a platform that excites people, then none of those people who typically work campaigns, or maybe people who might work a campaign for the first time, none of those people are going to come out. You have to have something that people are willing to fight for. It's why, you have to AstroTurf Cuomo's run or Adams' run, because no one really wants that. No one's really excited about having two of the most crooked people to ever grace the streets of New York City running for that office. People simply aren't. And so this election reiterates that what is needed is serious, bold policy proposals and serious movement from activists. I think that is the formula. Now, one of the lessons that the Democrats might take from this that is incorrect is that what people are looking for is someone who's young and someone who's social media savvy. And those things are always good. It's good to not have people falling over in Congress. It's good to not have 90-year-old people crapping their pants in the middle of session.
Oh, Lord.
But it's more important. I'd rather have a 90-year-old senator with good politics than a 25-year-old neoliberal stooge, right? And I think most people would say that. If the Congress people are voting for good things, and their age really doesn't matter, and neither does their social media savviness. But the consultant class in the Democratic Party, the same people who have been really running the show since the 1990s, since the Third Way, Clintonites, they have a different view of this. They see things in terms of pure demographic numbers and engagement and focus testing, rather than the meat and potatoes of politics, which is actually material engaging with the circumstances. I think that a lot of consultants will try and reproduce the Mamdani effect in the coming years to disappointing effects.
Hmm. Well, let's look at what we're looking at internationally. There is so much that is happening. Where would you like to begin? We've got a payout to Venezuela. Well, war that we're trying to launch on Venezuela. A payout for the missteps of Wall Street in Argentina. We've got we are instigating a fight with the Chinese who hold so much of our debt. I don't understand that. And we are still trying to stick it to Russia. I don't know where to begin. Where would you like to start?
Well, there are so many different places that the American empire is meddling in that it makes it hard to figure out where to start. I mean, like you say, we have we're coming off of this trade war with China that Trump seems to have completely capitulated on for no good that he started for no good reason. And then we have the escalation against Russia, where the Pentagon has approved the idea of sending Tomahawks into Ukraine, which nuclear capable munitions that Russia has iterated our complete red line. We have Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico speaking out against the Trump administration's plans to start drone striking and using special forces to go after the cartels in Mexico. And of course, you have in Venezuela, you have the carrier strike group appearing off the coast, and you have some of the Venezuelan opposition leaders begging the Americans to blow up their country, including Machado, who we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, the Nobel Prize winner. She's talking about just blowing up her country, having America bomb it, and giving all the oil to the Americans. It's really just some comprador classic playbook. And then, of course, you have the genocide in Palestine, where the Israelis are violating the ceasefire on a daily basis, killing Palestinians for for spurious reasons or no reason at all. So in each of these places, the hand of the U.S. is shaping the world in a negative way, and the new world that's been trying to be birthed in the wake of the American century is attempted. The Americans are attempting to stifle it. So let's start with China, right? The big thing with China is that American policy, more than normal in this case, is completely irrational. The recent discussions. Trump recently met with Xi Jinping in South Korea. Those discussions didn't really have anything to do with the big issue of Taiwan, but it had to do with another big but maybe slightly smaller issue of trade. And one of the things that the Trump administration was doing was putting putting taxes on Chinese-made ships, putting tariffs on all Chinese goods, launching a trade war with the intent of shutting out China. But the idea of American leverage is pretty overstated in Trump administration circles. The Chinese countered that by saying that we're going to ban the export of rare earth elements. Now, if you don't know what those are essentially the building blocks of the modern economy. If you want to build chips, if you want to build cell phones, if you want to build computers, you need these rare earth elements. And America's military industrial complex also relies on these rare earth elements. And so China simply said that, well, you're not allowed to, we're not going to allow these things to be shipped to you. You have no capacity to refine them and to make them usable, and we're not going to ship them to you anyway. Well, that's game over. That's game over for the Americans. And so we caved. And so they caved almost instantly. They said that we'll be lowering tariffs on China that are lower than most other countries around the world. Those Liberation Day tariffs, we'll be reducing them significantly for the next year. And in return, China will be reducing all of its retaliatory tariffs and retaliatory economic acts for the U.S. contingent on U.S. compliance with that deal. So this is a complete capitulation for the Trump administration, but the entire idea of launching this trade war was stupid to begin with. And so that's
just given, wait, they hold so much of our debt, Bryce Green. I don't know how. That's why I couldn't understand Zelensky having a hissy fit in the Oval Office. I'm like, we're paying for you. What are you doing? You don't do that. And wait a minute, when the Chinese hold so much of our debt, and they are the biggest economy in the world, and they're growing. Now, mind you, the fastest growing population and the youngest population in the world is Africa. So before we get to Nigeria, it's I didn't understand what the president was doing, because I said, you don't have a strong hand. But I think that was demonstrated by the fact that he had to go over there in the first place, because we had the cover story, right, Bryce? But what was really happening? Did he go, or did President Xi have him come over?
Well, I'm not clear on the specifics of that, but there were a lot of people analyzing the dynamics of that meeting, and both the internal dynamics, the interactions between Trump and Xi, and also the circumstances that led to it. And it seems very clear that the U.S. had no choice but to come to the table. The U.S. doesn't really have a choice on whether or not they're going to shut itself out of the rare earth markets. I mean, if that happens, well, then they've essentially lost. They've essentially lost, and China understands that. So that's their trump card. No pun intended. That's their. That's the. That's their trump card. Nothing that the U.S. can offer China or can punish China with can compare to the punishment that China can met out to the U.S. Simple as that. It's as simple as that. And of course, the idea of cooperation is so far out of the boundaries of American political discussion that that's not even what's being discussed. That's not even what's being discussed in the media. In the media, it's always, oh, well, Trump chickened out. Trump failed to stand up to China. Trump failed to, stick it to Xi Jinping and spread democracy around the world, blah, 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 blah. No one's saying, well, this policy is ridiculous, and China being the other major economy in the world, maybe it would be good if we were their friends. Maybe it would be good if we were friendly with each other. No one's saying that. That's completely outside of the bounds, which should really tell you how horrifying things are. But that's just one example of the insanity of American foreign policy. You mentioned Nigeria, in which Trump was threatening a military intervention to stop what's called the Christian genocide, or what he called a Christian genocide. Of course, nothing of that sort is going on. There are certainly killings, but the country is, largely Muslim, and the Americans certainly don't care about dead Christians or dead people in general. The only reason to go after Nigeria would be for alternative motives. Well, one of the things about Nigeria is that it is one of these oil-rich countries. And if we're seeing a pattern in American plans in Venezuela, then which again is another major oil-producing country, we could see these as an extension of the U.S. plan to secure oil reserves around the world in preparation for a global confrontation with somewhere like China. It shouldn't be taken seriously, whatever excuse the Americans give for intervening. They can always say, oh, someone's in trouble. Oh, someone's doing something bad. He's a dictator. We don't want him. He doesn't like democracy. We should blow him up. They will always find some excuse to blow up someone they don't like. And sometimes that excuse might resonate with many parts of the American public. But it should be understood that it's a complete farce. Every American intervention is a farce. I can't think of a single American intervention since the end of World War II that was justified, that was necessary, or that made life better for people anywhere in the world. Can you think of one, Santita? I mean, maybe I'm missing an outlier case. Maybe,
No.
I can't think of a single one.
And that is a tragedy. I mean, we have the goodwill that America had uh, coming out of the Second World War um, is gone. It's gone.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, I'm not saying that we were not dealing with an apartheid America, because we still have that. So, because America, that was not our greatness. That having been said, on the world stage, though, everything has changed, and we're still in 1945 thinking, and it's 2025. It's a whole different world, even when you look at China and the behemoth that they have become economically. Their population is not growing. The population that is growing in the world is Africa. I mean, indeed, the next century has already been named the century of the African. More than 70% of their population are under 18 on the continent. I mean, and they're growing. They're growing, they're growing, they're growing. So help me to understand, just as we look at where, how are we viewed internationally? Do we have any strength internationally? Or is that, I mean, because I know that we've lost a lot of standing, uh, just given what we've done with Gaza. I think
Well,
that.
we certainly have a lot of, structural power. We have the ability to, launch bombs all around the world. We have the ability to assassinate people. We have the ability to send carriers and to intimidate people. We have the ability to send weapons to governments that we like. But that doesn't mean that the world likes us.
Mhm.
Every year, the organizations do polling to try and figure out what organization or what entity or what country poses the biggest risk to global security. And without fail, ever since they've been studying this thing, the plurality of people in the world say that the United States is the biggest threat to global peace and stability. And those numbers have only increased since the Ukraine war and also since the Gaza war, both of which are creations of the United States foreign policy establishment, and either that or are directly supported by the U.S. foreign policy establishment. And these are seen as very destabilizing. And to say nothing of the history of the global war on terror, right? Going over and blowing up Afghanistan, blowing up Iraq, blowing up Libya, blowing up Syria, all of these African countries. One of their, you take Nigeria, for example,
Mhm.
one of the things that they're fighting against, one of the result or the source of a lot of this violence is the Islamic State in West Africa.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the Islamic State, of course, only exists because America blew up Syria and Iraq and allowed them to fester, deliberately allowed them to fester with the goal of overthrowing Assad. When that failed, all these characters scattered to the wind. And in Libya, especially, a lot of these Islamist groups, they started terrorizing different areas of Africa. This is a creation of American foreign policy. So other countries around the world clearly understand this, right? This isn't a secret. In fact, it's far better understood by people outside of America than it is inside of America. But that doesn't mean that every country can just do what it wants and throw up its hand and say, "Okay, bye, America." It's a process. American firms and American corporations still have an influence around the world. American and European financial institutions still have a major controlling interest in a lot of corporations and a lot of industries around the world. So that just can't be ignored. But the significance of this moment is that there is now an alternative in the BRICS bloc, the Russian development, Chinese development, Indian development. Well, the system that is being developed is able to uplift countries and industrialize them and build ports and build roads and build railroads without the strenuous demands that the Western institutions would usually force on these countries. And for example, the IMF, they're an organization that lends money to developing nations. Well, they, as a condition of their lending, they often demand structural changes to the economy. They demand things like privatizing healthcare systems, reducing the power of unions, or reducing the public sector workforce, reducing subsidies for things like energy and heat and food, really just throwing their country into poverty. Uh, but if you want to be a part of the Belt and Road Initiative and get investment from that whole apparatus, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is put up the final end result as collateral, and have some agreement with the Chinese. But it doesn't require you to change your government. It doesn't require you to change your uh, the way that you operate. And so countries are seeing the difference between option A, the Western institutions, and option B, the Chinese-led development, and they're seeing that as they're moving to China. They're moving closer and closer. And that's one of the reasons why Venezuela is so targeted, because they're not scared of having closer relations with Russia and China. That's one of the reasons that that the U.S. is so hell bent on destroying Ukraine by using it as a battering ram against Russia. Because if you are able to weaken and overextend Russia, well, then that makes the alliance between Russia and China, or that weakens the ability for Russia to support China, which is, of course, if you're looking at the grand chessboard, one of the critical objectives.
Well, I mean, before we go, you see, just domestically, because a lot of people are going to be focusing on these races. The President Obama, went to New Jersey, and many people feel that race is a toss-up. Do you think that he still has the power to push Democratic candidates over the line?
I think Obama certainly does. For better or worse, Obama left. I think for the worse, Obama left office as one of the most popular presidents, and still is comparable with like Abraham Lincoln in terms of ex-presidents and their popularity. This, of course, is based on the uncritical media coverage that plagued his presidency, and misunderstanding of what actually happened during those years. But regardless, I think Obama still has that sauce that's able to get people out and excited. And you mentioned earlier that he still hadn't endorsed Mamdani, but there was a major, all this fluff being made about a call that he made to Mamdani. They spoke on the phone, and that was enough for me to at least think of it as a tacit endorsement, because I don't. The fact that Obama didn't endorse anyone else, and the fact that he's calling this upstart candidate, that it seems like a less dark version, a less evil version of Obama, in terms of his ability to maybe follow through. But of course, only time will tell. But the power of Obama is certainly still to be something to be reckoned with within the Democratic Party. Hopefully, with this younger generation, that power will erode. If Obama is still a kingmaker in 20 years, what will that mean for any sort of progressive movement? Obama, he notoriously painted himself. I mean, this is verbatim. He said, "I'm the one standing between you, the banks, and the pitchforks." And if that's his role, and he still has that sort of magic touch, well, then that could be a very dangerous thing for any sort of progressive candidates and progressive movements in the future.
Well, before we go, I know we've moved around a lot, but there's a lot happening today. And, I have so much respect for your insights and for your overviews. And also you're from this emerging generation, which is what we see with Omar Fateh, and we see that with Mamdani. And your view of the world is different than the one that we're living in. It is. And so, just given the fact that we've looked at some global issues, some national issues, and local issues, since all politics really is that, what's our takeaway today? Because it seems to me that the people around the world, as the oligarchs are pushing forward, the people are pushing back. Any thoughts?
I think that that's a good way to sum it up. I mean, the American empire, which broadly understood as the collection of corporations, of interest, of finance, of militarist, of the companies that support them. The American empire, broadly speaking, is in a very dangerous spot. It's shown that it's unable to adequately compete against China. It's shown that domestically, the people are demanding something different. It's shown that it's flailing by attacking small countries like Venezuela and Mexico and saber-rattling about Nigeria. It's shown that it's deeply unpopular and morally reprehensible by supporting the genocide in Gaza. And it's showing that it's very reckless and self-destructive by the activities that it's supporting in Ukraine. And I think that that's the big takeaway, that despite what we see, all the evils of the American empire, despite all that, there is a movement and there is a trend towards bucking that system and severely challenging it. That's something to be hopeful. That's something to promote, and that's something to keep your attention on for the foreseeable future.
How can we follow you during the week on your various platforms?
I'm really mostly on Twitter. You can follow me there at the Green BJ, and you can follow my Substack where there is sometimes content, but those are you can find my day to day just on Twitter.
Absolutely, and that's Green, TheGreenEBJ. That's
Correct.
right, Green with an E. I want everyone to find you properly. And of course, it's always a joy to be with you in this season. And of course, everyone, I want you to reach out to your churches, the United Way, the Red Cross, and other spaces. If you are in need of food, please, 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 please. No one should be without food. And let's just continue to fight, everybody, because everybody. I heard Charlemagne the God say that Democrats, you've already lost. That is not true. You've got to hold on. I don't know if anyone has been looking at uh, these new premiums. They are expensive. I can see how tens of millions of Americans will just go past having health care. That would be disastrous. It would cost too many people their lives. And that is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely uncalled for. It's unnecessary. I'm Santita Jackson. Please, everybody, like and share on the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio. Bryce Green, it's always a joy to be with you. God bless you, everybody. Hey, Morning Stars, I love, hey, Max and all of you. Um, and Daryl, you're free to have your opinion, but you do not have the right to be vulgar. Now, just you can make your point without being unkind. That is not what we do here, you know. And so you don't have to curse here. And if you're going to do that, I invite your leave. Do not do that here, Daryl. And you want opinion? Yeah, I mean, if you want to come here, come here. Come here in the right spirit. But do not do this here. Do not. Don't do that, because you're not winning, and we don't have time for that here. We do not. So, and if you don't want to share, don't share. And if you don't want to be here, you may leave. But if you're going to be here, I require that you be respectful. Period. And that's it. That's all. Now, either you play by the rules here or you must go. That is it. We have lots of people here who disagree with uh, with people who are expressing themselves here, and I am very clear that I've inherited my father's friends and enemies, neither of whom I have earned. I get it, and so I take some of that incoming fire because of my family. I get it, but you don't have the right to come here and be disruptive. Not because it's not just me. This is a community here. And it's a loving community, even as we disagree with each other. So abide by the rules or please exit.
Get him, Auntie.
There we go. I want you to follow Bryce Green, everybody. And please go on X. If you want to tangle with him, enter at your own risk at the Green BJ. That's TheGreene. B like boy, J like Jonathan. So at the Green BJ, but you could also follow him on Substack. And may God bless all of you, sending you so much love today. And please give Bryce your support. He deserves it. He deserves it. We need to support our young people, and we need to support people who make good sense. How about that?
Thank you so much.
Much love. My love to you.